Snow falls on blood. The mountains of Colorado have seen their share of violence. Wars fought by forgotten tribes, silver miners who died for metal that ran out decades ago, soldiers who came home broken carrying ghosts in their eyes. But this snow is different. This blood is fresh. There are some wounds that never heal, some debts that can't be forgiven, some promises that demand payment in the currency of the grave. They say the mountains remember everything, every scream echoing off stone walls, every last breath misting in the frozen air, every letter written to the dead. Tonight the mountains will remember one more thing: a woman who had everything taken from her, a woman who finally decided to take something back. The fire burns in the distance. Smoke rises like prayers to an indifferent sky. And somewhere in the darkness, between right and wrong, between justice and revenge, between love and loss, the reckoning begins. The wind carved through the Colorado peaks like a blade through bone. Catherine Morrison sat at her kitchen table, pen hovering over paper. The same ritual. Every night for 8 years. She wrote to a dead man. James. Today I fixed the cabin door again. The woods warping from the cold. You always said I should use cedar instead of pine. You were right about that too. The cabin held its breath around her. Logs settled with soft groans. The fire whispered in the hearth. Outside, snow fell in thick curtains, muffling the world in white silence. Kate was 45 now. Hard lines had carved themselves around her eyes. Her brown hair, streaked with premature gray, hung loose past her shoulders. She wore James's old flannel shirt over thermal underwear. It still smelled like him sometimes when the wind was right. The nightmares came back last week. The one where I'm standing at the recruitment office telling you to sign up again. Telling you it's the right thing to do. Her hand trembled. The pen left a small ink blot on the page. I keep thinking, if I hadn't pushed, if I just let you stay home after the first tour, maybe you'd be here complaining about the door. She folded the letter carefully, added it to the wooden box beside her bed. 8 years of letters. 8 years of conversations with a ghost. Kate had been living in the cabin for 3 years now. Before that, she'd tried to make it work in Denver. Tried therapy. Tried dating. Tried pretending that the guilt wasn't eating her alive from the inside. The mountains were simpler. Honest. They didn't lie about what they were. She poured herself tea from the kettle on the wood stove. Earl Grey, James had hated it, called it fancy water. But Kate needed the ritual, the small comforts that kept the darkness at bay. Through the window, the driveway vanished into trees and shadow. No one came here. That was the point. The nearest neighbor was 12 miles down a winding dirt road that turned to ice most of the winter. The phone rang. Kate stared at it. The old rotary phone on the kitchen counter, black and stubborn. It rang 4 times before she answered. Hello. Kate, it's me. Sarah's voice, bright and warm and alive. Kate closed her eyes. Hi, Sarah. I've been calling for weeks. You never pick up. I know. I'm worried about you. Mom's worried. We all are. Kate leaned against the counter. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. I'm fine. No, you're not. And that's okay. But hiding in the mountains isn't helping anyone. It helps me. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Kate could hear the sounds of civilization in the background. Traffic, people talking, life happening. I got your address from Mom, Sarah said finally. What? Your address. The cabin. I'm coming to see you. Kate's stomach dropped. Sarah, no, don't. It's been 3 years, Kate. 3 years since I've seen my sister. That's enough. The roads are bad. It's not safe. I have 4-wheel drive, and I'm stubborn. You know that. Kate did know that. Sarah had always been the determined one, the optimist. Even as kids, when their father drank too much and their mother worked double shifts, Sarah believed everything would work out. Sarah, please. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I'll be there by afternoon. The line went dead. Kate stared at the phone. Her hands were shaking now, not from the cold. Sarah couldn't come here. This place was Kate's refuge, her penance, the place where she kept her grief safe from the world. But Sarah was coming anyway. Kate walked to the window and looked out at the snow. It was falling harder now, thick flakes that caught the light from the cabin, beautiful and merciless. She thought about James. about the last time she'd seen him loading his gear into the truck for his second deployment. He'd been nervous, had wanted to stay home, maybe go to college instead. "It's your duty," she told him. "Your country needs you." Such righteous words, such absolute certainty. Now James was bones in a cemetery in Colorado Springs, and Kate lived alone with her righteousness. She went back to the table and pulled out another sheet of paper. "James, Sarah's coming tomorrow. I don't know what to say to her. I don't know how to be around people anymore. I've been broken for so long, I'm not sure what the pieces look like. Do you remember that first night we met at Murphy's bar? You were arguing with that guy about the Broncos. You were so sure they'd make the playoffs. You bet him $50. They lost every game that season, but you never admitted you were wrong. You just said the universe was broken, not your prediction. I think I understand that now." She signed the letter and folded it, put it with the others. Tomorrow Sarah would arrive. Kate would have to pretend to be human again, would have to smile and make conversation and act like she wasn't made of scar tissue and regret. She finished her tea and banked the fire, checked the locks on the doors, though there was no one for miles. Old habits from a life that felt like someone else's story. In the bathroom mirror, she looked at herself. Really looked. 45 years old. Widow. Hermit. Killer of dreams and destroyer of the only good thing that had ever happened to her. Her eyes were still green. James had loved her eyes. "Like spring water," he'd said. "Clear and cool and perfect." Now they looked like winter, frozen over, nothing moving beneath the surface. Kate turned off the lights and went to bed. Outside, the wind sang its lonely song through the pines. She woke to the sound of an engine. It was past noon. Kate had slept badly, tossing through dreams of James in his dress uniform standing at the edge of a cliff. In the dreams, she was always pushing him over. The engine sound grew louder. A car struggling up the icy driveway. Kate pulled on jeans and boots and James's old army jacket. She opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. A blue Honda Civic was making its way up the last stretch of driveway, tires spinning on the ice. The car fishtailed, recovered, and came to a stop near the cabin. The driver's door opened and Sarah climbed out. Even at 38, Sarah looked young. She had their mother's face, round and open and trusting. Her hair was shorter than Kate remembered, a practical bob that framed her face. She wore a bright red winter coat and mittens that looked hand-knitted. "Jesus Christ, Kate, you live in the middle of nowhere." Sarah's breath misted in the cold air. She looked around at the trees, the mountains, the endless white expanse. "It's beautiful," she added quietly. Kate stood on the porch, not moving. "You shouldn't have come." "Too late now." Sarah pulled a duffel bag from the back seat. "Besides, I missed you." The words hit Kate like a physical blow. She gripped the porch railing. "Come on," Sarah said, walking toward the cabin. "It's freezing out here." Kate led her sister inside. The cabin felt different with another person in it. Smaller, more exposed. Sarah looked around, taking in the sparse furniture, the wood stove, the complete absence of modern conveniences. No television, no computer, just books and silence, and the weight of isolation. "It's very minimal," Sarah said diplomatically. "I don't need much." Sarah sat down at the kitchen table. She picked up the pen Kate had left there, the one she used for her nightly letters. "What do you do all day?" "Read, write, maintain the cabin." "Write what?" Kate turned away. "Nothing important." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mom thinks you're punishing yourself. Mom should mind her own business. We're your family, Kate. You are our business." Kate filled the kettle and put it on the stove. She needed something to do with her hands. "How's teaching?" she asked, changing the subject. "Good. Hard, but good. I have 23 kids this year. 3rd grade. They're exhausting and wonderful and completely insane." Sarah had always been good with children. Patient, kind. She would have made a wonderful mother, but her husband had left her 2 years ago. Something about wanting different things. Kate had never gotten the full story. "Do you miss Denver?" Sarah asked. "No." "Do you miss anything?" Kate looked out the window. The snow was still falling, but lighter now. Gentle flakes that drifted down like ash. "I miss him," she said quietly. Sarah nodded. "I know. You don't understand. Sorry, then explain it to me. Kate turned back to her sister. Sarah's face was open, expectant. She genuinely wanted to understand. That was Sarah's gift, and her curse she believed people could be helped. Fixed, saved. I killed him, Kate said. The IED killed him. I convinced him to go back. After his first tour, he wanted to stay home. But I told him it was his duty, his responsibility. Kate, he trusted me, and I sent him to die. The kettle began to whistle. Kate turned off the burner and poured water into 2 mugs. Earl Grey for herself, chamomile for Sarah. She remembered her sister's preferences, even after 3 years. You couldn't have known, Sarah said. Doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Kate set the mugs on the table and sat down across from Sarah. Her sister looked so young, so hopeful. It hurt to look at her. Tell me about your life, Kate said. Your real life. Not the sanitized version you put in your letters. Sarah smiled slightly. What letters? You never respond to them. I read them. But you don't write back. No. Why not? Kate sipped her tea. It was too hot, but she needed the burn. I don't have anything good to say. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, a jay called from the trees. The sound was sharp and lonely. I brought something for you, Sarah said finally. She reached into her duffel bag and pulled out a small wrapped package, set it on the table between them. Kate stared at it. What is it? Open it. Kate's hands were steady as she unwrapped the paper. Inside was a picture frame. The photo showed James and Kate at a barbecue probably 5 years ago. They were laughing at something off camera. James had his arm around Kate's waist. They looked happy. They looked like people who believed in the future. Kate's throat closed up. I thought you might want it, Sarah said. You don't have any pictures of him here. That was intentional. Kate had packed away everything that reminded her of James when she moved to the cabin. The pictures, the clothes, the coffee mug with the chip in the handle that he'd refused to throw away. Thank you, Kate managed. He loved you, you know, more than anything. I know. Then why are you doing this to yourself? Kate looked at the photo, James's face frozen in a moment of joy. Before the second deployment, before the IED, before she'd destroyed everything good in her life. Because someone has to pay, she said. They talked for the rest of the afternoon. Small talk, mostly. Sarah told stories about her students, about their mother's new boyfriend, about the neighbor's dog who kept getting into her garden. Normal things, the rhythms of ordinary life. Kate found herself relaxing despite everything. Sarah had that effect on people. She made the world feel safer, more manageable. She always had. As evening approached, Kate cooked dinner. Nothing fancy canned soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. But it felt strange to cook for another person. Strange and almost pleasant. I'll sleep on the couch, Sarah said as they cleaned up. You don't have to stay. Where else am I going? The nearest motel is 40 miles away. Kate nodded. She'd forgotten how far she was from everything, how isolated she'd made herself. They settled in the living room after dinner. Sarah on the couch, Kate in the armchair by the fire. The wood stove radiated warmth and the flames cast dancing shadows on the walls. Do you ever think about coming back, Sarah asked, to where civilization, Denver, anywhere that isn't the middle of nowhere? Kate poked at the fire with an iron rod. The logs shifted, sending up a shower of sparks. This is where I belong. Says who? Says me. Sarah pulled a blanket around herself. She looked comfortable here, despite everything. Sarah could make herself at home anywhere. I worry about you, she said. Don't. I can't help it. You're my big sister. It's my job to worry. Kate had been 27 when Sarah was born. She'd helped raise her especially after their father left. Sarah had been Kate's practice run at caring for someone. She'd been good at it then, before James, before everything went wrong. I'm fine, Kate said. You're not fine. You're surviving. There's a difference. Maybe Sarah was right. Kate couldn't remember the last time she'd felt truly fine. But surviving was something. It was more than James had managed. They went to bed around 10. Kate gave Sarah extra blankets and showed her where the bathroom was. The cabin felt different with another person in it. Less empty, less like a tomb. Kate lay in her bed, listening to the sounds of the house settling. Sarah's breathing from the living room, the wind outside. For the first time in months, she didn't write a letter to James before sleep. Kate woke before dawn as she always did. She dressed quietly and slipped outside to check the weather. The snow had stopped during the night, leaving everything pristine and white. The sky was clear, promising a cold but beautiful day. She split wood for the fire, her breath misting in the frigid air. The physical work felt good, necessary. It kept her grounded when her mind wanted to drift. When she came back inside, Sarah was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. "Morning," Sarah said. "I hope you don't mind. I found your coffee." "It's fine." Kate poured herself a cup and sat down. The coffee was stronger than she usually made it. Sarah had always liked her caffeine with authority. "Beautiful morning," Sarah said, looking out the window. "Yes, I can see why you like it here. It's peaceful." Kate nodded. Peaceful was one word for it. Isolated was another. Dead was a third. "I have to head back today," Sarah said. "School tomorrow." "Of course. But I want to come back. Maybe in a few weeks." Kate's stomach tightened. "Sarah, I know you don't want visitors, but I'm not really a visitor, am I? I'm family." Kate looked at her sister. Sarah's face was determined. Once Sarah made up her mind about something, she was immovable. "The roads get worse in February," Kate said. "Then I'll come before February." They finished breakfast in comfortable silence. Sarah packed her bag while Kate tended the fire. Normal morning routines, except nothing about this felt normal to Kate. At 10 o'clock, Sarah loaded her car and prepared to leave. "Thank you," she said, standing by the driver's door, "for letting me stay." "You didn't give me much choice," Sarah smiled. "No, I didn't." She hugged Kate quickly, unexpectedly. Kate stood rigid for a moment, then let herself relax into her sister's embrace. Sarah smelled like shampoo and coffee and life. "I love you," Sarah said, "even if you don't want me to." Sarah, "Take care of yourself, Kate. Really take care." Sarah got into her car and started the engine. She backed down the driveway, carefully waving once before disappearing into the trees. Kate stood on the porch for a long time after the sound of the engine faded. The silence felt different now, heavier, like something important had been taken away. She went inside and sat at the kitchen table, picked up her pen. "James, Sarah came to visit. First time I've seen her in 3 years. She looks good. Happy mostly. She brought a picture of us. Do you remember the Hendersons' barbecue? You were telling that story about the sergeant who got lost in his own base. She thinks I should come back to civilization. Maybe she's right. Maybe I've been hiding long enough. But I don't know how to be around people anymore. I don't know how to pretend that I'm not broken. Sometimes I think about the life we would have had. Kids maybe. A house with a garden, growing old together. All the things I talked myself out of because I was afraid. Now I'm afraid of different things." She folded the letter and put it in the box with the others. The day stretched ahead of her, empty and familiar. Kate had books to read, wood to split, small repairs to make around the cabin. The same routines that had carried her through 3 years of self-imposed exile. But something had changed. Sarah's visit had cracked something open inside her, a small fissure in the wall she'd built around herself. Kate looked at the photograph Sarah had given her. James's smile captured in silver and light. He looked so young, so alive. "Live your life, Kate," he'd said the night before his second deployment. "Promise me, if something happens, don't let it stop you from living." She'd promised, then broken that promise every day for 8 years. Maybe it was time to try again. Kate put the photograph on the mantelpiece next to a piece of driftwood she'd found by a mountain stream. Small things, tokens of a life she was trying to remember how to live. Outside, the sun climbed higher, warming the snow and making the whole world sparkle. For the first time in years, Kate thought about tomorrow, not with dread, but with something that might have been hope. The phone rang. Kate looked at it surprised. Sarah had only left an hour ago. She shouldn't be calling unless Kate answered on the third ring. "Hello." Silence. Then a man's voice, rough and unfamiliar. "Catherine Morrison." "Yes. Your sister had an accident." The world tilted. Kate gripped the phone tighter. "What kind of accident?" "Car went off the road, down in Broken Creek Canyon." "Is she?" "You should come down here, ma'am, soon as you can." The line went dead. Kate stood frozen phone in her hand. The silence of the cabin pressed around her like deep water. Sarah. Kate grabbed her keys and coat, ran outside to her truck, an old Ford that James had taught her to drive. The engine turned over reluctantly in the cold. She backed down the driveway, faster than was safe, tires sliding on the ice. At the main road, she turned toward Broken Creek Canyon. The drive took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of curves and steep drops, and Kate's heart hammering against her ribs. She thought about Sarah's little Honda, not built for mountain roads. Thought about black ice and guardrails and the long fall into darkness. She found the scene 3 miles past the canyon entrance. 2 sheriff's cars, an ambulance, a tow truck. Red and blue lights flashing against the snow. Men in uniform standing around talking in low voices. Kate parked and got out. A deputy approached her, young, nervous, probably new. "Ma'am, you can't." "I'm Catherine Morrison. You called me." The deputy's face changed. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Sheriff Webb wants to talk to you." Sheriff Webb. Kate remembered him vaguely. He'd served with James in Afghanistan. First tour before Kate convinced James to go back. Webb was standing at the edge of the road looking down into the canyon. He was older than Kate remembered, grayer, with the weathered face of a man who'd seen too much. "Kate, Marcus." They'd never been close. Webb had always been quiet, serious. The kind of soldier who followed orders and didn't ask questions. "I'm sorry about your sister," he said. Kate looked past him down into the canyon. She could see the twisted metal of Sarah's car wrapped around a pine tree, steam still rising from the engine. "Was she—" Kate couldn't finish the question. "We're still working on that. EMTs are down there now." Kate started toward the edge of the road. Webb caught her arm. "Kate, don't. I need to see her." "No, you don't." Something in his voice made her look at him. Really look. Webb's face was pale, strained. His eyes wouldn't meet hers. "What aren't you telling me?" Webb glanced around at the other officers. Then he pulled Kate aside, away from the crowd. "Your sister didn't just slide off the road," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "Her car was forced off. We found paint scrapes on the side. Someone ran her down." Kate felt the world shift beneath her feet. "That's impossible." "I'm sorry. Who would do that? Sarah doesn't have enemies. She's a school teacher." "We don't know yet." "But Kate—" Webb hesitated. "There's something else." Kate waited. "We found something in her car. A piece of paper with your address on it. Handwritten." "So, the handwriting doesn't match your sister's?" Kate stared at him. The implications were forming in her mind, but she couldn't quite grasp them. Didn't want to grasp them. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying someone else wrote down your address. Someone who wanted to know where you live." The mountain wind cut through Kate's jacket like a blade. Below, she could hear the EMTs shouting to each other, their voices echoing off the canyon walls. "Is she alive?" Kate asked. Webb was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry, Kate. She's gone." The words hit her like a physical blow. Kate doubled over, suddenly unable to breathe. The world spun around her, white and cold and merciless. Sarah. Bright, hopeful Sarah, who believed in second chances and the goodness of people. Sarah, who had driven up a mountain road to save her broken sister. Sarah was dead, and someone had killed her to get to Kate. Kate straightened slowly. The grief was still there, an ocean of it waiting to drown her. But underneath the grief was something else. Something harder and colder than the mountain wind. Rage. "I want to see her," Kate said. "Kate, I want to see my sister." Webb nodded reluctantly. He led her to the edge of the road and pointed down into the canyon. 20 feet below, Sarah's car was crushed against the pine tree. The EMTs were working around a shape covered by a white sheet. Kate climbed over the guardrail. "Kate, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. She half slid, half fell down the steep slope, grabbing at tree branches to slow her descent. Behind her, Webb was shouting, but his voice seemed far away. Kate reached the bottom of the canyon. The EMTs looked up as she approached. "Ma'am, you can't be here." "She's my sister." Kate knelt beside the white sheet. Her hands were shaking as she pulled it back. Sarah's face was peaceful, eyes closed, lips slightly parted. A thin line of blood ran from her nose, but otherwise she looked like she was sleeping. Kate touched her sister's cheek. The skin was cold, but still soft. Still Sarah. I'm sorry, Kate whispered. I'm so sorry. She pulled the sheet back farther. Sarah was wearing the red coat from yesterday, bright and cheerful and optimistic, like everything about her. There was something in Sarah's hand. Kate looked closer. Sarah's fingers were wrapped around a small piece of paper. Kate pried the fingers open gently and pulled the paper free. It was the same handwriting as the address. Block letters carefully formed, "We know where you live." Kate stared at the note. The rage inside her was growing, spreading through her body like fire. Someone had murdered her sister to send her a message. Someone was coming for her. Kate folded the note and put it in her pocket. She kissed Sarah's forehead once, then stood up. Ma'am, one of the EMTs was watching her with concern. Are you all right? Kate looked at him, at the twisted car, at the blood on the snow. No, she said. I'm not all right. She climbed back up the slope. Webb was waiting at the top along with several other officers. Kate, I know this is hard. Who did this? We don't know yet, but we'll find them. Kate looked at the sheriff, at his careful, measured expression, at the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. Will you? Of course. Like you found the people who killed James. Webb flinched. That was different. That was war. This is war too. Kate turned and walked back to her truck. Behind her, Webb called her name, but she didn't look back. She drove home slowly, carefully. The roads were icy and she couldn't afford another accident. Not now. At the cabin, she sat in the truck for a long time, engine running, heat blowing, looking at the place that had been her refuge for 3 years. It wasn't a refuge anymore. It was a target. Kate got out of the truck and went inside. The cabin felt different now, exposed, vulnerable. She walked to the mantelpiece and picked up the photograph Sarah had given her. James's smile captured forever in silver and light. They killed her, Kate said to the photograph. They killed Sarah to get to me. James smiled back at her, frozen in a moment of happiness from another life. Kate set the picture down and went to the bedroom. In the closet behind boxes of winter clothes was a metal case she hadn't opened in 3 years. Inside the case were James's things, his dress uniform, his medals, his service pistol. Kate lifted out the pistol, a Beretta 9mm, well-maintained and deadly. James had taught her to shoot with this gun during those long summer evenings when they were first married. It's not about the gun, he'd said. It's about commitment. If you're going to pull the trigger, you better be prepared for what comes next. Kate checked the magazine. Still loaded. James had always been thorough. She tucked the gun into her waistband and went back to the kitchen, sat down at the table with pen and paper. James, they killed Sarah. Someone ran her off the road and left a message for me. They want me to know they're coming. I think it's time I remembered who I used to be. Before the guilt, before the hiding. You taught me to fight. You taught me to survive. You taught me that some things are worth protecting no matter the cost. I couldn't protect you, but maybe I can protect your memory. Maybe I can finally pay the price I owe. Kate signed the letter and folded it. But instead of putting it in the box with the others, she slipped it into her pocket. This wasn't a letter to a dead man anymore. This was a promise to a living woman. Kate Morrison was done hiding. The war was coming to her, whether she wanted it or not, and she was going to be ready. Kate spent the night preparing. She moved through the cabin like a ghost, collecting what she needed. Ammunition from James's gun case, a tactical knife he'd brought back from his first deployment, rope, matches, a small backpack of survival gear. The funeral home could wait. The police could wait. The proper channels and procedures that civilized people followed, all of that could wait. Sarah's killers were out there, and they were coming. Kate laid everything out on the kitchen table. The Beretta, 3 spare magazines, the knife with its serrated edge. She cleaned each item methodically the way James had taught her. Preparation prevents panic, he'd said. When the shooting starts, you fall back on your training. Nothing else matters. Kate had no formal training, but she'd had James. 8 years of marriage to a man who understood violence, who tried to teach her to protect herself in a world that wasn't safe. She'd been a good student, better than she'd wanted to be. At dawn, Kate loaded her truck and drove back to Broken Creek Canyon. The scene was different now. No ambulances, no EMTs, just yellow tape fluttering in the wind and tire tracks in the snow. Sarah's car was gone, hauled away to some police impound lot. Kate parked at the edge of the road and walked to where the guardrail was bent. She looked down into the canyon following the path Sarah's car had taken. 20 feet down, into the trees, into death. Kate climbed over the guardrail and made her way down the slope. The snow was disturbed here, churned up by the rescue workers, but underneath she could see other tracks, boot prints, leading away from the crash site. Kate followed them. The tracks led deeper into the canyon away from the road. Whoever had checked on Sarah after the crash to make sure she was dead, Kate thought grimly had taken a roundabout route back to civilization. The tracks ended at a dirt road that paralleled the main highway. Fresh tire marks in the mud showed where a vehicle had been parked. Big tires, a truck or SUV. Kate knelt in the mud and studied the tread pattern. Deep grooves, aggressive tread, off-road tires, the kind used by people who spent time in the backcountry. She took out her phone and photographed the tracks. Then she followed the dirt road east away from the highway. The road wound through dense forest for 2 miles before opening into a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a hunting cabin, old, weathered, with broken windows and a sagging roof. Kate approached carefully. The cabin looked abandoned, but appearances could be deceiving. She circled the building once, looking for signs of recent use. The snow around the cabin was trampled, cigarette butts scattered near the front door, beer cans half buried in a drift. Someone had been here recently. Kate tried the front door, unlocked. Inside the cabin was a mess. Sleeping bags on the floor, empty food containers, the smell of unwashed bodies and stale smoke. On a wooden table in the center of the room, Kate found what she was looking for, a road map of the area marked with red pen. Her cabin was circled in the mountains. The main road between her place and town was highlighted, and there at Broken Creek Canyon, someone had drawn an X. Kate studied the map. Other locations were marked as well. A gas station, a motel, what looked like a warehouse or storage facility. These people had been planning. Kate folded the map and put it in her pocket. She was about to leave when she heard footsteps on the porch. She drew the Beretta and flattened herself against the wall beside the door. The footsteps were careful, deliberate, someone trying to move quietly. The door creaked open. "Tommy, you in there?" A man's voice, rough with a slight southern accent. Kate waited. "Shit's getting weird, man. The boss wants to move up the timeline." Footsteps entered the cabin. Kate could see the man's shadow on the wall opposite her. "Tommy!" The man stepped farther into the room. Kate could see him now, tall, thin, wearing military surplus clothing, a rifle slung over his shoulder. Kate stepped out from behind the door and pressed the Beretta against the base of his skull. "Don't move!" The man froze. "Drop the rifle." He let the weapon fall to the floor. "Turn around, slowly." The man turned. He was younger than Kate had expected, maybe early 30s, pale skin marked with old acne scars. Nervous eyes that darted around the room. "You're her," he said. "The sister." "Who are you?" "Nobody, just hired help." Kate kept the gun trained on his forehead. "Hired by who?" "I can't." Kate moved faster than thought. The butt of the pistol cracked against the man's temple. He staggered, blood trickling down his face. "Wrong answer." "Jesus Christ, lady. My sister is dead. You and your friends killed her. Give me one reason I shouldn't paint this wall with your brains." The man's eyes went wide. Kate could see the fear in them now. Real fear. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," he said quickly. "We were just supposed to scare her, make her tell us where you live. But it went wrong. She fought back, tried to grab the wheel. Tommy got excited, pushed too hard." Kate felt the rage building in her chest. Sarah had died because some amateur criminal had gotten excited. "Where's Tommy now?" "I don't know. He was supposed to meet me here." Kate looked around the cabin again. Empty sleeping bags, multiple food containers. These people had been camping here for days. "How many of you are there?" "4. Me, Tommy Vasquez, and the boss." "What's the boss's name?" The man hesitated. Kate raised the gun again. "Caleb," he said quickly. "Caleb Torino, but everyone calls him Black Cal." Kate filed the name away. "What does he want with me?" "I don't know, I swear. He just said we had to find you. Why? He didn't say, but the man paused as if deciding whether to continue. He talked about you like he knew you. Personal like. Kate frowned. The name Caleb Torino meant nothing to her. She was sure she'd never heard it before. Where is he now? Probably back at the warehouse. That's where we've been staying. What warehouse? The man described a location 15 miles south of town, an old lumber mill that had been closed for years. Kate memorized the directions. Then she looked at the man standing in front of her. Young, scared, probably just along for whatever money Torino was paying. But he'd been there when Sarah died. He'd helped kill her sister. Please, the man said, I got kids, a wife. Kate thought about Sarah, about her bright smile and her hand-knitted mittens, and her absolute faith that people could be saved. Sarah would have let this man go, would have believed he could change, could be better than he was. Kate wasn't Sarah. You should have thought about your kids before you killed my sister. The Beretta spoke once. The man dropped to the floor like a marionette with cut strings. Kate stood over the body for a moment. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just the cold clarity of a job half finished. She picked up the man's rifle and checked the magazine. Half full. She slung it over her shoulder and left the cabin. Outside, she found the man's truck parked behind the building. A beat-up Chevy with mud tires and a gun rack. The keys were in the ignition. Kate drove the truck back to the main road and left it in a ditch. Let the police find it and wonder. Let them chase ghosts while she hunted the living. She hiked back to her own truck and drove home. At the cabin, Kate spread the marked map on her kitchen table. She studied the locations, trying to understand the pattern. Her cabin was the target, but the other marks suggested a larger operation. The warehouse where Torino's people were staying, the motel where they might have stashed supplies, the gas station where they'd scout for information. These weren't random criminals. They were organized, methodical, but they'd made a mistake. They'd killed Sarah before getting what they wanted. Now they'd have to come to Kate instead of luring her out. And Kate would be ready. She spent the afternoon preparing the cabin. James had taught her about defensive positions, about creating kill zones and fallback routes. The cabin wasn't ideal, too many windows, too many approaches, but it could be fortified. Kate moved furniture to block the windows facing the driveway. She placed ammunition caches in strategic locations around the house. She rigged simple alarms using fishing line and tin cans. Most importantly, she prepared her escape route. Behind the cabin, hidden by a stand of pine trees, was the entrance to an old mine shaft. James had discovered it during their first winter here and had spent months making it habitable. He'd called it their bolt hole, a place to retreat if the cabin ever became untenable. Kate checked the tunnel. James had stocked it with supplies, food, water, medical kit, weapons. Everything needed to survive for weeks if necessary. She hoped it wouldn't come to that. As evening approached, Kate made herself dinner. Canned soup and crackers. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Her mind was focused on what was coming. They would probably come at night, under cover of darkness when they thought she'd be asleep and vulnerable. They'd expect to find a grieving woman paralyzed by shock and fear. They'd find something else entirely. Kate cleaned her dishes and checked her weapons one more time. The Beretta in her shoulder holster, the tactical knife strapped to her thigh, the rifle leaning against the kitchen counter. Then she sat down at the table and wrote, James, I killed a man today, one of the people who murdered Sarah. I felt nothing when I pulled the trigger, nothing but the satisfaction of a job started. There are 3 more out there, including their leader, someone named Caleb Torino. I've never heard the name, but he seems to know me. I'm going to kill them all. I know you tell me to let the police handle it, to trust the system, to be better than my anger. But the system failed Sarah, and my anger is all I have left. I'm sorry if this disappoints you. I'm sorry if this isn't the woman you married, but this is who I am now. Kate folded the letter and put it in her pocket with the others. Then she turned off all the lights in the cabin and settled down to wait. They came at midnight. Kate heard the alarms first, the soft tinkling of tin cans as someone tripped the fishing line stretched across the driveway. Then silence. Kate was lying on the floor beside the front window, looking out through a gap in the furniture barricade. The moon was 3/4 full, casting silver light on the snow. She saw movement in the tree line, a shadow detaching itself from a pine trunk. Then another. Two men approaching from different angles, moving carefully, professionally. Kate waited. The shadows reached the edge of the clearing around the cabin. They paused, probably communicating by radio or hand signals. Then they moved. One man went left toward the back of the cabin. The other came straight up the driveway. Kate shifted position, crawling to the kitchen window that faced the backyard. Through the glass, she could see the second man approaching the rear door. He was young Hispanic with an automatic rifle held at the ready, military bearing. This wasn't some amateur criminal like the man at the hunting cabin. Kate waited until he reached the back door. Then she rose and fired through the window. Glass exploded inward. The man spun and fell, clutching his shoulder. He rolled behind a pile of firewood, shouting something in Spanish. Kate was already moving. She grabbed the rifle from the kitchen counter and sprinted toward the front of the cabin. The front door exploded inward. The second man came through fast and low, sweeping the room with his weapon. Kate fired from the hallway. Her shot went wide, splintering the doorframe. The man dove behind the overturned couch she'd used to barricade the window. "Vasquez," he shouted. "You hit?" "I'm good," came the reply from outside. "Bitch got lucky." Kate smiled grimly. She crawled forward on her belly, using the kitchen counter for cover. "You Catherine Morrison," the man called out. Kate didn't answer. "My name's Tommy Walsh. I'm the one who killed your sister." Kate felt her finger tighten on the trigger. Tommy, the one who'd gotten excited and pushed Sarah's car too hard. "Thought you'd want to know," Tommy continued. "She screamed when she went over the edge. Called out your name." Rage flooded through Kate like molten metal. She forced herself to breathe, to think. Tommy was trying to make her angry, trying to get her to do something stupid. Instead, Kate did something smart. She crawled to the kitchen and quietly opened the back door. The man called Vasquez was still behind the woodpile, clutching his wounded shoulder. Kate crept outside and circled around behind him. Vasquez never heard her coming. The knife slid between his ribs like it was meant to be there. He made a soft, choking sound and went still. Kate took his rifle and his radio. Then she circled back toward the front of the cabin. Tommy was still behind the couch, occasionally firing into the kitchen to keep her pinned down. He had no idea she wasn't there anymore. Kate climbed onto the roof through a window in the loft. The metal was slippery with frost, but she moved carefully, silently. She positioned herself above the front door and looked down. Tommy was crouched behind the couch, rifle trained on the kitchen doorway, waiting for her to show herself. Kate dropped through the front window behind him. Tommy spun, but Kate was already moving. She hit him with the rifle butt, knocking his weapon aside. Then she was on top of him, the knife at his throat. "Hello, Tommy." His eyes went wide. Up close, she could see he was older than she'd expected. 40 maybe, with prison tattoos and the lean build of a lifetime criminal. "Where's your boss?" Tommy tried to speak, but only blood came out. Kate had hit him harder than she'd intended. She pressed the knife deeper. "Where's Caleb Torino?" "Warehouse." Tommy gasped. "Old mill. South of town." "Huh, why does he want me?" Tommy's eyes were getting glassy. Shock setting in. Said you killed his brother." Kate frowned. "I never killed anyone's brother." "Afghanistan," Tommy whispered. "You sent him back. He died because of you." Understanding hit Kate like a physical blow. Not killed. Convinced to go back to war. Just like James. What was his brother's name? But Tommy's eyes had rolled back. He was gone. Kate sat back on her heels, mind racing. Someone from James's unit. Someone who blamed her for convincing James to redeploy. She thought about the other soldiers she'd met. The faces at the base, at the homecoming ceremonies, at the funeral. Most of them were just names. Young men far from home doing their duty. But one name tugged at her memory. James had mentioned a kid from Texas, a troublemaker who'd gotten into drugs after his first tour. James had tried to help him, had vouched for him when he wanted to re-enlist. What was his name? Danny. Danny something. Kate searched Tommy's body but found nothing useful. No ID, no phone, no indication of where Torino might be besides the warehouse. She checked on Vasquez's body. Also clean. These weren't random criminals. They were professionals, or at least well-trained amateurs. Ex-military, probably. Men who knew how to operate in hostile territory. Kate gathered her weapons and supplies. The cabin was compromised now. Even if she'd killed Torino's men, he would know something had gone wrong when they didn't report back. She needed to move. Kate loaded her truck with everything essential: food, water, ammunition, medical supplies. She left the letters to James, all except the ones in her pocket. Before leaving, she did one more thing. Kate opened the gas line to the propane tank behind the cabin. Then she lit a cigarette, one of James's old Marlboros that she'd kept in a drawer, and left it burning on the kitchen table. She was half a mile down the mountain road when the explosion lit up the night sky behind her. The cabin, her refuge, her prison, her penance burned like a funeral pyre against the stars. Kate drove toward town, toward the warehouse where Caleb Torino was waiting. Her hands were steady on the wheel, her mind clear and focused. 2 down, 2 to go. She thought about what Tommy had said, about Torino's brother dying in Afghanistan because of her. Maybe it was true. Maybe she had convinced another young man to go back to war. Maybe she'd destroyed another family with her righteous certainty about duty and service. It didn't matter now. Sarah was dead. Kate's old life was burning behind her. All that remained was the reckoning. The warehouse district was a graveyard of broken dreams. Kate parked her truck behind an abandoned gas station and surveyed the area on foot. Old buildings lined the industrial road like tombstones. Most were empty, their windows dark and broken. But one building showed signs of life. The old lumber mill sat at the end of the street, a massive concrete structure with a corrugated metal roof. Light leaked from cracks around boarded-up windows. A single truck was parked outside, a black SUV with mud-caked tires. Kate circled the building looking for entrances and exits. The main door was on the south side facing the parking area. A loading dock on the east side was partially open. On the north side, she found a broken window large enough to crawl through. She chose the window. Kate slipped inside and found herself in what had once been the mill's main floor. Massive machinery loomed in the darkness, conveyor belts, cutting stations equipment she couldn't identify. The air smelled of rust and old wood. Light came from the far end of the building. Kate moved toward it, using the machinery for cover. As she got closer, she could hear voices. 2 men talking in low tones. Kate crept forward until she could see into the lit area. A camping setup had been established near the loading dock. Battery-powered lanterns hung from hooks in the ceiling. Sleeping bags were laid out on pallets. A card table held food maps and what looked like radio equipment. 2 men sat at the table. One was older, maybe 50, with graying hair and the solid build of an ex-soldier. The other was younger, thin and nervous, constantly checking his phone. They should have checked in by now, the younger man was saying. Give them time, the older man replied. The Morrison woman might not have been at the cabin. Or Tommy got trigger-happy again. The older man this had to be. Caleb Torino leaned back in his chair. Tommy follows orders. He'll call when the job's done. Kate studied Torino's face. Something about it was familiar, but she couldn't place it. The broad cheekbones, the deep-set eyes. Then Torino turned slightly and Kate saw his profile. The resemblance hit her like a punch to the gut. James. Torino looked like James. Not exactly. Torino was older, harder, with lines that spoke of violence and bad choices. But the basic bone structure was the same. The shape of the skull, the way he held his shoulders. They could have been brothers. Kate's mind raced. James had mentioned siblings occasionally, but always vaguely. A sister in California he'd lost touch with. A brother who'd gotten into trouble. Danny Morrison. James's younger brother who'd followed him into the army, who'd gotten mixed up with drugs and bad crowds, who died on his second deployment just like James. But Danny Morrison was dead. James had told her so, had shown her the death certificate. Unless, Kate looked at Torino again, at the man who called himself Caleb, at the face that was so much like her dead husband's. Danny Morrison wasn't dead. He was right there, and he blamed her for James's death. Kate eased back into the shadows, her mind reeling. How was this possible? James had been certain his brother was dead, had grieved for him. But if Danny was alive, if he'd somehow faked his own death. Still no word, the younger man said, checking his phone again. Relax, Eddie. Tommy knows what he's doing. Eddie, not Vasquez that had been the man Kate killed at the cabin. This was someone else, someone new. Kate counted the players. Tommy and Vasquez were dead. That left Torino and this Eddie, 2 against 1. Better odds than she'd started with. Kate began moving again, circling around the edge of the lit area. She needed to get closer to hear what they were planning. "What if she's not at the cabin?" Eddie asked. "She's there," Torino said with certainty. "I know Kate. She's a creature of habit. Always was." Kate froze. Torino knew her personally, had known her well enough to predict her behavior. "You sure about this?" Eddie continued. "I mean, going after a war widow seems like overkill." Torino's face darkened. "She killed my brother. I thought you said he died in combat." "He did, because she convinced him to go back. James wanted to stay home after his first tour, wanted to go to college, start a family, but she kept pushing, kept talking about duty and honor and all that military bullshit." Kate felt sick. She remembered those conversations. James had been reluctant to redeploy, but Kate had thought it was just nerves. She'd encouraged him to see it through, to finish what he'd started. She'd meant it as support, as love. Torino saw it as murder. "So she has to pay," Torino continued. "An eye for an eye. By killing her sister." "That was an accident. We were supposed to grab Sarah, use her to lure Kate out. But Tommy got excited when she fought back." Torino shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Kate knows we're coming now. She'll try to run or hide, but she can't escape what she owes." Kate had heard enough. She stepped out of the shadows, her rifle raised. "Hello, Danny." Both men spun toward her. Eddie reached for a pistol on the table, but Kate's rifle was already trained on him. "Don't." Eddie froze hand inches from the gun. Torino stared at her with undisguised hatred. "Kate, you look good for a dead man. Death was easier than living with what you did." Kate kept the rifle steady. "James mourned you, blamed himself for not saving you. He tried to save me, tried to get me clean, get me back on track, and you convinced him to throw his life away. He made his own choice." "Bullshit. You manipulated him, made him think he had to prove something." Kate felt the truth of it like a knife between her ribs. She had pushed James, had made him feel like staying home was cowardice. "You're right," she said quietly. Torino blinked, clearly not expecting that. "I did push him. I did convince him to go back, and he died because of it." "Then you admit it." "I admit I made a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake that cost me everything I loved." Kate shifted her aim slightly, covering both men. "But that doesn't give you the right to murder my sister." "An eye for an eye," Torino repeated. "Sarah had nothing to do with James. She was innocent. So was James." Kate felt her finger tighten on the trigger. It would be so easy. 2 quick shots, and this would all be over. But something held her back. "James wouldn't want this," she said. "James is dead. Because of me. Not because of some grand conspiracy. Because his wife was an idiot who thought she knew what was best for him." Torino's face twisted with rage. "Stop talking about him like you knew him. You destroyed him. I loved him. You killed him." Kate stared at the man who shared her husband's face, who'd lived 8 years believing his brother's death was her fault. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was. But Sarah's death was his fault, and that was what mattered now. "Where's Sheriff Webb?" Kate asked. Both men looked confused. "Webb," Torino said. "What about him?" "He called me. Told me about Sarah's accident. New details he shouldn't have known." Torino and Eddie exchanged glances. "We never talked to any sheriff," Eddie said. Kate felt cold dread spreading through her chest. If Torino's people hadn't contacted Webb, then how had he known about the note in Sarah's hand? How had he known about the address being written in someone else's handwriting, unless Webb had written it himself? "Son of a bitch," Kate whispered. She'd been so focused on hunting Torino that she'd missed the real threat. Webb had been in Afghanistan with James, had known about Danny, had probably orchestrated this whole thing. What's wrong?" Torino asked, sensing her distraction. Kate was about to answer when the lights went out. The warehouse plunged into absolute darkness. Kate heard Eddie scrambling for his gun, heard Torino cursing. Then she heard footsteps, multiple sets, coming from different directions. "Everybody stay calm," a familiar voice called out. "This is Sheriff Webb. I'm here to help." Kate smiled grimly in the darkness. The real enemy had finally shown himself, and she was about to learn just how deep this conspiracy went. The darkness was complete. Kate pressed herself against a concrete pillar, controlling her breathing. Around her, the warehouse had become a maze of shadows and whispered threats. "Kate Morrison!" Sheriff Webb's voice echoed from somewhere near the loading dock. "I know you're in here." Footsteps moved through the darkness. Multiple sets coordinated. Webb hadn't come alone. "You killed 2 of my men tonight," Webb continued. "Tommy and Vasquez. That's a problem." Kate felt the pieces clicking into place. Webb's men, not Torino's. She'd been hunting the wrong enemy. "I served with your husband," Webb called out. "Did he ever mention me, Marcus Webb, 1st Squad, Bravo Company?" Kate remembered now. James had talked about Webb, the quiet one, the soldier who always followed orders but never volunteered for anything dangerous. "James trusted me," Webb said, "right up until the end." A light flicked on across the warehouse. Battery-powered, held by someone Kate couldn't see. Then another light. And another. Webb's people were surrounding her. "The thing about James," Webb continued, his voice moving closer, "is that he was naive. Believed in honor duty, all that Boy Scout bullshit. Believed people were fundamentally good." Kate shifted position, moving deeper into the machinery. The old mill equipment provided cover, but it also trapped her. Too many blind spots. "He never saw it coming," Webb said. "Never suspected that his squad leader might be skimming drug money, might be selling information to the locals." Kate's blood went cold. "You got him killed," she whispered. "I got myself rich. James got himself killed by being too fucking honorable to look the other way." More lights appeared. Kate counted at least 6 men moving through the warehouse. She was outnumbered and outgunned, but she was also invisible in the darkness. "See, the problem with your husband," Webb continued, "is that he started asking questions, started noticing discrepancies in patrol routes, missing supplies, dead drops that didn't make it into official reports." Kate crept forward, using a conveyor belt for cover. She needed to find an exit. "So I arranged for him to take point on a routine patrol, sent him down a road I knew was mined, told the insurgents exactly when he'd be there." The rage hit Kate like a physical force. She gripped her rifle so tightly her knuckles went white. James hadn't died because of her. He died because Webb had betrayed him. "But you know what the funny thing is?" Webb's voice was getting closer. "Your husband figured it out. In his last transmission, he said my name, said he knew what I'd done." Kate saw movement to her left. One of Webb's men creeping between the machines with a tactical light. She lined up the shot and squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked. The man dropped. Immediately, the warehouse erupted in gunfire. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. Bullets sparked off machinery and punched through metal sheeting. Kate rolled behind a cutting station as rounds chewed up the concrete where she'd been standing. "Light her up," Webb shouted. Kate crawled toward the back of the warehouse, staying low. Behind her, voices shouted coordinates and directions. These men knew how to work together. She reached the broken window she'd entered through and started to climb out. A hand grabbed her ankle. Kate looked down to see Eddie Torino's nervous sidekick pulling her back into the warehouse. Blood streamed from a cut on his forehead. "Going somewhere," he snarled. Kate kicked him in the face with her free boot. Eddie's nose crunched and he released her ankle. Kate scrambled through the window and hit the ground running. Behind her, the gunfire was dying down. Webb's men had lost their target, but Kate knew they'd be after her soon. She sprinted toward her truck, then stopped. They'd be watching the roads, waiting for her to run. Instead, Kate headed into the forest. The mountains rose dark and forbidding ahead of her. Somewhere up there in the network of canyons and abandoned mines, she might find refuge, or she might find her grave. Either way, it was better than facing Webb's army in open ground. Kate climbed through the night. The forest was dense here, thick with pine and aspen that blocked most of the moonlight. She moved by feel, following game trails and old logging roads. Behind her, lights flickered through the trees. Webb's men tracking her with flashlights and night vision. They were good, professional, but Kate had advantages they didn't. She knew these mountains, had spent 3 years exploring every canyon, every trail, every hidden valley. James had taught her to think like a soldier, but the wilderness had taught her to think like prey. And sometimes prey survived by becoming predator. Kate reached a ridgeline and paused to catch her breath. Below, she could see the lights of her pursuers spread out in a search pattern. At least 8 men, maybe more. She checked her ammunition. 2 magazines for the rifle plus the Beretta. Not enough for a prolonged firefight. But Kate wasn't planning to fight them head-on. She was going to disappear. Kate continued climbing, following a path she discovered last winter. It led to Dead Man's Canyon, a narrow gorge carved by centuries of snowmelt and winter storms. The canyon was a maze. Dozens of side passages, hidden caves, abandoned mine shafts from the old silver boom. A place where someone could vanish completely, or where someone could hunt from the shadows. Kate reached the canyon entrance as dawn broke over the peaks. The sky was pale gray, heavy with the promise of snow. She looked back once at the forest below. No sign of her pursuers yet, but they'd be coming. Kate disappeared into the stone labyrinth. Dead Man's Canyon had been carved by violence. Ancient floods had torn through the rock, leaving behind a twisted maze of passages and chambers. The walls were smooth in places, jagged in others. Strange formations hung from the ceiling like teeth. Kate had explored parts of the canyon before, but never this deep. Never with the desperation of the hunted. She moved carefully, testing each step. The rock was slick with moisture, treacherous in the dim light. Behind her, echoing off the stone walls, she heard voices. They'd found the entrance. Kate pressed deeper into the canyon, following a passage that curved away from the main channel. The walls closed in around her, barely wide enough for her shoulders. Then the passage opened into a vast chamber. Kate stepped into a cathedral of stone. The ceiling soared overhead, lost in shadow. Ancient formations covered the walls, petroglyphs left by peoples who'd lived here long before the silver miners arrived. In the center of the chamber was a pool of black water. Steam rose from the surface. Hot springs. Kate had heard stories about them, but had never found them before. More importantly, the chamber had multiple exits, passages leading deeper into the mountain toward the old mine workings. Kate chose the largest passage and kept moving. Behind her, the voices grew louder. The mine shaft was a wound in the mountain's heart. Kate followed the narrow tunnel deeper underground, her rifle ready. The walls were timber-shored, though many of the supports had rotted with age. Water dripped constantly from the ceiling. The air smelled of rust and decay. After 20 minutes of careful progress, Kate found what she was looking for. The tunnel opened into a work chamber, part of the old silver mine. Rotting equipment filled the space, ore carts, sluices, mechanical contraptions she couldn't identify. But more importantly, the chamber had what Kate needed: choke points, blind corners, multiple levels connected by rickety ladders. This was where she'd make her stand. Kate positioned herself behind an overturned ore cart and waited. She didn't wait long. The first man entered the chamber, cautiously, rifle raised. Kate couldn't see his face in the dim light, but his movement was professional. Military training. He signaled to someone behind him, then advanced into the chamber. Kate let him get halfway across the room. Then she opened fire. The rifle shot echoed like thunder in the confined space. The man spun and fell, clutching his leg. Immediately, return fire erupted from the tunnel entrance. Muzzle flashes strobed in the darkness. Bullets sparked off metal and splintered ancient wood. Kate rolled to a new position behind a mining cart. A second man entered the chamber, moving fast and low. Kate tracked him with her rifle and fired. The man dropped. "Spread out," someone shouted from the tunnel. Webb's voice. "She's trapped in there." More men entered the chamber. Kate counted muzzle flashes, at least 4 shooters. She was outnumbered, but she had the terrain advantage. Kate climbed a ladder to a higher level, keeping her head down as bullets whined overhead. From her new position, she could see the entire chamber. 5 men spread out below her, moving carefully, using the old equipment for cover. And there, directing them from the tunnel entrance, was Sheriff Marcus Webb. Kate lined up the shot. Webb's head filled her scope. Her finger found the trigger. Then someone grabbed her from behind. Kate spun, bringing the rifle around. Eddie Vasquez. No, that was wrong. Eddie something else. Torino's nervous lieutenant. Eddie had a pistol pressed against her ribs. "Drop it," he whispered. Kate looked down at the chamber below. Webb's men were advancing, unaware of the drama playing out on the upper level. "I said drop it." Kate released the rifle. It clattered on the wooden platform. "Now the sidearm." Kate drew the Beretta slowly and set it beside the rifle. Eddie smiled. His face was pale and streaked with blood from where she'd kicked him at the warehouse. "You know what your problem is," he said quietly. "You think you're the only one who can hunt." Below them, Webb's men continued their advance. They'd found the bodies of the two men Kate had killed, and their movements were more cautious now. "I've been tracking you since the warehouse," Eddie continued. "Followed you up the mountain into the canyon. You're good, but you're not invisible." Kate calculated distances. Eddie was too close. She couldn't reach her weapons before he pulled the trigger. "Why?" she asked. "Why what? Why help Webb? You worked for Torino." Eddie's smile turned ugly. "Torino's a psycho. Webb pays better. You betrayed him. Business is business." Below them, Webb had noticed the sudden silence from above. "Eddie," he called. "You up there?" "Got her, Sheriff," Eddie replied. "She's disarmed. Bring her down." Eddie gestured with the pistol. "You heard the man." Kate climbed down the ladder slowly, Eddie behind her. Her mind raced looking for opportunities, but Eddie was careful, professional. At the bottom of the ladder, Webb's men surrounded her. 5 rifles trained on her chest. Webb approached his own weapon, lowered but ready. "Catherine Morrison," he said. "We meet at last." Up close, Webb looked older than Kate remembered. Grayer, lines of stress and guilt carved deep around his eyes. "Hello, Marcus. I always wondered if we'd have this conversation. About how you murdered my husband." Webb's face hardened. "James was collateral damage. Wrong place, wrong time. You sent him to die." "I sent him on patrol. He chose to take point." Kate felt her rage building again. "You sold him out to the insurgents. I made a business arrangement. James got in the way." One of Webb's men, a young deputy Kate didn't recognize, looked uncomfortable. "Sheriff," the deputy said, "maybe we should—" "Shut up, Morrison." Webb snapped. Kate looked at the deputy more closely. Morrison. Same name as hers, as James's, as Danny's. Understanding hit her like a lightning bolt. "You're him," she whispered. "You're Danny Morrison." The young deputy's face went white. Not dead. Not Caleb Torino. Just a kid playing at being someone else. "I don't know what you're talking about," Danny said quickly. But Kate could see it now. The resemblance to James, the nervous energy, the way he held his shoulders. "James thought you were dead," Kate said. "I am dead," Danny replied. "Danny Morrison died in Afghanistan. I'm Deputy Tom Morrison now. No relation." "Touching family reunion," Webb interrupted. "But we have business to finish." He raised his rifle. Kate closed her eyes thinking of James, of Sarah, of all the letters she'd written to a dead man. The rifle shot echoed through the chamber. Kate opened her eyes. Webb was staring down at the hole in his chest, surprise written across his face. Behind him, Danny Morrison held a smoking pistol. "You killed my brother," Danny said quietly. Webb toppled backward, dead before he hit the ground. The other deputies stared in shock. In the sudden silence, Kate could hear water dripping from the ceiling. "Drop your weapons." Danny ordered, his pistol now trained on his fellow officers. They hesitated. "I said drop them." The weapons clattered to the stone floor. Danny looked at Kate. "Get your guns." Kate retrieved her rifle and pistol from the upper platform. When she climbed back down, the other deputies were lined up against the wall. "What now?" one of them asked. Danny was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You were never here. None of this happened. Webb died in a hunting accident." "Danny," one of the deputies started, "my name is Tom Morrison, and I just saved all your careers." The men looked at each other uncertainly. "Go," Danny said. "Tell them Webb got separated from the group, fell down a mine shaft. Happens all the time up here." Slowly, reluctantly, the deputies filed out of the chamber. Kate and Danny were alone with Webb's body. "Why?" Kate asked. Danny looked down at the dead sheriff. "Because he killed James, and because I've been living a lie for 8 years. James mourned you." "Good, that was the point." Danny sat down heavily on an ore cart. In the dim light, he looked very young. "I was a fuck-up," he said quietly. "Drugs, drinking, bad debts. James kept bailing me out, kept believing I could change." Kate waited. "After my first tour, I owed money to some bad people. Enough money to get me killed. So I faked my own death. Figured it was easier than disappointing James again. He loved you. I know. That's why I couldn't face him. Kate looked at Danny Morrison, the boy James had tried to save the ghost she'd been writing letters to for 8 years. He blamed himself for your death, she said. Better than knowing what I really was. And after he died, Danny's face crumpled. I wanted to come forward, to tell him I was alive. But by then it was too late. Kate felt something shift inside her, a weight she'd been carrying for 8 years. It wasn't your fault, she said. James dying. It wasn't because I convinced him to re-enlist. No, it was because Webb sold him out. And Webb's dead now. Danny nodded. Kate looked around the chamber, at the old mining equipment, at Webb's body sprawled on the stone floor. What happens now, she asked. Now you disappear, leave Colorado, start over somewhere else. What about you? Danny stood up. I go back to being Tom Morrison, deputy sheriff. I do my job. Try to make up for some of the damage. Kate nodded. It wasn't justice exactly, but it was something. Danny, he looked back at her. James would have forgiven you for everything. Danny's eyes filled with tears. I know. That's what made it so hard. Kate left Danny in the chamber with Webb's body. She climbed back through the mine shaft, through the canyon, into the pale morning light. At the canyon entrance, she found what she was looking for. Caleb Torino sat on a boulder, smoking a cigarette. He looked up as Kate approached. Heard shooting, he said. Webb's dead. Good. Torino took a long drag on his cigarette. So what now? You going to kill me too? Kate considered it. This man had murdered her sister, had spent years planning revenge for something that wasn't her fault. Sarah's still dead, she said. Yeah, she is. You killed an innocent woman. Lot of innocent people die. Doesn't make the world stop turning. Kate raised her rifle. Torino didn't flinch. Go ahead, he said. Pull the trigger, add another body to the pile. Kate stared at him through the scope. Caleb Torino, the man who'd stolen her sister's life. James wouldn't want this, she said. James is dead. So is Sarah. Kate lowered the rifle. Torino looked surprised. That's it. You want to live with what you did, fine. Live with it. Kate turned and walked away. Behind her, Torino called out, She fought, you know. Your sister, at the end, she fought like hell. Kate stopped. She said something too, before Tommy pushed her car over the edge. Kate turned back. She said, tell Kate I forgive her. Didn't know what she meant then. Kate felt tears on her cheeks. Now you do. Yeah, now I do. Kate left Caleb Torino sitting on his boulder, smoking his cigarette, living with his ghosts. She had her own ghost to face. 3 months later, Kate Morrison stood in front of 2 graves in a cemetery in Colorado Springs. James Morrison, beloved husband, brother, soldier. Sarah Morrison, beloved sister, teacher, friend. Kate knelt and placed fresh flowers on each grave. Daffodils for James, he'd always loved spring. Sunflowers for Sarah, bright and hopeful, like she'd always been. I'm sorry it took me so long to visit, Kate said to the headstones. I had some things to work out. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak trees that shaded the graves. I know the truth now, Kate continued, about how you really died, James. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't anyone's fault except Webb's. She touched James's headstone. The granite was warm in the afternoon sun. And Sarah, God, Sarah. She died because someone wanted to hurt me. Because I'd hidden away for so long, I forgot there were people in the world who needed protection. Kate pulled a letter from her pocket, the last letter she'd written to James. I'm not going to write to you anymore. Not because I love you less, but because I love you enough to let you rest. I'm going to do something with the life you saved, something that matters. Sarah believed people could be helped, could be saved. Maybe she was right. Kate folded the letter and left it on James's grave. Then she stood and walked back to her car. In the back seat were boxes of files, information about missing persons, cold cases, unsolved murders, people who'd fallen through the cracks of the system. Kate had a new job now, private investigator, specializing in cases the police couldn't or wouldn't solve. She'd started with women, wives who'd disappeared, daughters who'd run away, sisters who'd been forgotten. She was good at it, better than she'd expected. Maybe it was because she understood loss, understood what it meant to survive when everyone you loved was gone. Or maybe it was because James had taught her to fight and Sarah had taught her to care. Either way, she had work to do. Kate started the car and drove away from the cemetery. In the rearview mirror, she could see the two graves growing smaller, but she could still feel them with her, James and Sarah, watching over her, giving her strength. Kate Morrison had spent 8 years writing letters to the dead. Now she was going to spend the rest of her life speaking for them. The mountains of Colorado faded behind her as she drove toward whatever came next. But for the first time in years, Kate wasn't afraid of the future. She had promises to keep, and promises were for the living.